Hello and welcome to Newbury Racecourse ahead of one of the landmark moments of the season. The first Group 1 race for older horses, the Shaqab Lockinge Stakes, a race with a rich history, won by some of the greats. Back in the 70s, Brigadier Gerard, and a few years ago, the mighty Frankel. We're here to find out how preparations are going ahead of the big mile race. And first of all, we're chatting to Harriet Collins, the Director of Marketing. Harriet, first of all, I guess it's an exciting time of the year with regards to what's to come for the season ahead. And the Lockinge, the Shaqab Lockinge, is a perfect point in which to begin. Owners back as well.
Absolutely. Our Group 1 showpiece, we really look forward to it. Obviously, we missed it last year in 2020, so it's so brilliant to have it back running again this year. Huge thanks to the support of Shaqab, who are sponsoring it for a 6th year, and the prize money is back at 2019 levels of 350,000, which is always positive.
Give us an idea of how many people are going to be here on Lockinge Day.
Well, we're obviously narrowly missed out on having crowds back with the rule change on the 17th, but really positive to have owners back here. And I think what everybody's really missed is having a bit of atmosphere around the paddock, and we experienced it for the first time this year with our DDS Spring Trials back in April. But I really hope that there'll be a bit more of a buzz. It's a big day, some fantastic racing, and looking forward to seeing all the owners back.
It is a big day, but it's been a tough time for racecourses in general over the last 12 months with COVID, etc. How important is it to have the support of the sponsors?
Hugely important, and we've been so lucky and so grateful, from a behind closed doors proposition, not having crowds here. We've really had to work with a lot of our sponsors, but they've been absolutely fantastic. We've also been joined by Bet Victor for some of the supporting races, including the Bet Victor London Cup on Saturday. We've had a great relationship with them. We've really had to adapt as well, doing more sort of online with our annual members or online Zoom calls and previews. But it's sort of been quite an interesting experience, and hopefully we've sort of worked with those sponsors to give them the best exposure as well.
When you look around the racecourse, there's a lot of building work that is now completed. Have Newbury done their upgrades, or where are you at with that?
Yeah, well, I think that's really interesting. In 2019, our redevelopment has sort of come to a close. But I think over the number of years, the last 5 years, all our customers have always come here and experienced something else being redeveloped. There's always been cladding on some of the buildings, another area that perhaps is out of bounds. And, we're now complete, and it is absolutely really positive to say that we are ready to have lots of people back. And the course looks fantastic, lots of new areas to explore, seating areas, new Royal Box. So we're really looking forward to that next meeting on the 10th of June, where we're able to welcome a limited crowd back. But ahead of this Saturday, the course looks fantastic, the race course looks great, and we can't wait.
So everything off the course is in perfect working order. But let's find out what conditions are like on the racecourse with Keith Otterson. Keith, first of all, a little bit about the preparations for Shaqab Lockinge Day and how they have gone for you.
Well, quite smoothly so far, Rishi. We've only had one flat meeting prior to this, which was the middle of April, when we ran the trials, the Greenham and the Fred Darling. And strangely enough, April was such a dry month. We had to water the track, just to put a little bit on to make sure it was good ground for those horses coming out at the early part of the season. So since then, it remained dry, sort of almost historically dry during April. And we've moved into May now, and it almost hasn't stopped raining. So which is good in many ways, because although it hasn't warmed up, that's the other thing that hasn't happened, and it hasn't been massive grass growth. We got on early in March with the preparation of this course. It did respond. We had some warm weather in March, if people recall, and in the last week or so, when the frosts have sort of abated, as you can see, the track's come back. We've got plenty of cover. It's greened up, and I think it's in fairly good nick. So the guys have worked hard. We've relied on the elements as usual. There's not much we can do about that, and it's responded pretty well. So we're quite pleased where we are.
I'll just pick up on that phrase, plenty of cover, because a lot of people talk about that when it comes to preparing a racecourse and the covering of grass. And that's the first thing you notice is just how thick and lush that is. With respect of getting the course ready and preparing ground that is ideal for as many horses as possible. You can never have all bases covered. But would this be as good as it gets?
No, it's never as good as it gets. I mean, we were busy in April. We had nearly 200 horses running over the 2 days, and because we had no warmth in the soil at that stage, it took a while to recover. It's only this week or so leading up that we've seen the recovery come strong. So it could have been better than this. It could have been stronger. We haven't had to irrigate ourselves, and people will be pleased about that. And for this race, if we'd had the ground conditions we had in April, you'd be very happy, which was good, fast, a perfect racing surface. We're going to be on the easy side, there's no doubt about that. But having looked through the race, I think that's going to suit a lot of horses. And it's a Group 1 race. I'm sure they can cope with a little bit of juice in the ground.
With your racing hat on, and it being, as you mentioned, a Group 1 race, and a really important Group 1 race, what's your own personal view of where the Shaqab Lockinge stands with regards to the whole season?
Yeah, it's the first Group 1 challenge in Britain for the 4-year-olds and upwards. So we'll see some of last year's 3-year-olds coming through to take on the established milers, the older horses, and they'll group up here, and the pattern takes them then to Royal Ascot. They're very similar races, but it's one of those races that it makes reputations. Champions come here at the beginning of their seasons. We know all the great horses that have been here in the past: Brigadier Gerard, Selkirk, and then of course Frankel and even Ribchester. So the very good milers have come here, and they've gone on to be great stallions. So there's the potential for this year. So it's right up there. It's our premium race of the flat season, and it puts horses on that road to greatness.
And Keith, it looks to have attracted another very strong field. Who are some of the standouts for you?
We're very pleased with the entry and those horses that confirmed on Monday. We've obviously got potentially the best milers in the country coming here, and also going up against those who are established and have strutted their stuff for the last few seasons. So we'll be really looking forward to see Palace Pier, Lope Fernandez, Lady Bowthorpe as well, and a contingent of horses who have obviously got some great potential to go on and be very good Group 1 horses.
Keith, thank you very much. Everything's all set with regards to the course and, of course, what's happened off the course in preparation for Shaqab Lockinge Day. But let's join Martin Dwyer now to find out what it's like to ride the straight mile here at Newbury. And here he is, my classic winning chum, Martin Dwyer. Martin, it's a straight mile. What could be simpler in racing? Surely it's just point and shoot.
Well, you say that, Rishi, but Newbury is a fantastic track. It's probably one of the best tracks in the country, if not Europe. But the mile here, although it's a straight mile and it seems relatively easy, it can be quite tricky, as we've seen in the past. I always think Newbury lends itself to front runners, especially the Lockinge. If we look down the track, as you can see, we start at the very end there, as you can see, and it's never easy to settle a horse when they go steady in a Lockinge or a straight mile. It's easier on a round mile. So some horses can come unstuck if they...
Why is that?
Because what you find is if on a small field, they normally congregate to the middle of the track. Everybody's looking for a little bit of cover. If you've got a keen horse that needs to drop his head, it's never easy to find cover. And then what normally happens is the pace steadies in front. Whoever's on the front end steadies the pace, and you've got the long way up the straight. And then as you look out now, the last furlong, there's a little bit of a dip. And if you're setting good fractions from the front and you kick when you reach that dip, you get away from the field. It's really hard to make the ground back up. And a prime example of that for me was Galileo Gold came here as one of the likely favourites a few years ago. And Frankie really struggled to get him settled. He tried to get him in behind, couldn't find cover. He ended up, I think, coming away from the rest of the runners to try and get him to switch off, and he never switched off. And Ribchester made all under William Buick, and he did exactly what I said. He set the right fractions, and he kicked from the front, and it's very hard to catch a horse that kicks from the front end on a steady run mile.
Martin, this is one of the great races of the season. A number of amazing horses have won it in time. What's your opinion on the qualities that you need? You talk about, as a jockey, settling, etc. What are the other things that you would look for?
Well, I always think you need a horse that's got Group 1 form in the bag. We've seen some great winners of this race. It's a fantastic race. It's the first Group 1 over a mile for 4-year-olds, and you need a horse with the Group 1 form, a horse that is very straightforward and uncomplicated. We've seen some good performances here. I remember Hawkwing, I think he won 11 lengths when he won here that day. Again, he made all and he kicked on. And you need a horse that's versatile. If you get a horse that's a little bit tricky, likes a round track and it comes with attached risks, then it's always difficult. But we've seen some real good performances. This is a race that can make or break a racehorse as a stallion and going on to be a future champion.
Yeah, would Hawkwing be your most significant winner, do you think? Or the one that you remember best because of the 11-length victory?
Visually, it was fantastic to watch. Even Cape Cross was a good winner. I think he was pacemaking that day, and he got away on the front end. We've seen some really good winners. I mean, the mighty Frankel, he started his 4-year-old career in this race. Even he needed a pacemaker that day. He had Bullet Train to lead him and make sure the race wasn't slowed up. And he was a good winner that day. It's a great race, and really looking forward to Saturday.
And it's set to be another great race again in 2021. Let's find out a bit more about the key contenders for the Shaqab Lockinge Stakes with Niall Hannity and Tom Bull.
12 horses have been declared for the Shaqab Lockinge over the straight 1 mile at Newbury. Myself, Niall Hannity and Tom Bull are going to have a look at. I was happy when I saw the final declarations. It's a good field. First of all, Tom, what's your thoughts on the ground?
Yeah, it's going to be interesting, isn't it? Because they are due a bit of rain, and it's already good to soft ground. So it could turn up being soft on the day if the rain does continue to fall. We know that's going to suit some horses more than others. In particular, the favourite Palace Pier will be absolutely fine. He's won on heavy ground in the past, so that's going to be fine. The connection will be very happy with that for him. It won't suit others quite as much. The likes of Loppe, Fernandez, and a couple of others too won't be quite as happy on the ground. So it will be for an interesting kind of next few days to see what happens. But at the moment, Palace Pier very much in the driving position. He's going to be short price, and rightly so. This time last year he was coming through the handicap ranks. You mentioned he's fine on the ground. He's got a BHA rating of 125. He sets a very high standard. We still don't know the ceiling of his ability. We certainly don't, and the way that he returned this season at Sandown really put my breath away in a way, because he's only 80% fit, according to John Gosden. And it showed that he's back to his very best, because he finished last season not as a damp squib kind of thing, but it still wasn't quite up to his very best level that we know he can reach, because he lost a shoe at Ascot and he wasn't quite at his best. But seeing that return and the way he pulverised his opposition in really good style, not 100% fitness, suggests to me that he is going to be extremely hard to beat. He's the highest rated in the field by quite a margin. And as you say, we're yet to find out how good he really is. He could be the next coming. And this is the kind of race at the moment that you'd expect him to win. Yeah, OK, let's look at the full field of 12 that are going to post. Straight 1 mile at Newbury, ground, track, trip, everything is absolutely fine with him. Bless him at the top. He was second in the bet 365 mile last time out to Palace Pier, but obviously no match to him. So solid Palace Pier. Lupita Fernandez is second in. Aidan O'Brien, I looked earlier in the week, he was operating at a 24% strike rate. So a couple of weeks ago, there's rumours of, are they running well? Ballydoyle are very much. We saw it at York this week again. They're flying along. I suppose the worry with this horse is it ground. Is that your concern? Very much so. Yeah, I would fear for Lupita Fernandez if the rain did come, because his poorest runs have been on softer surfaces, and his best runs have been when the ground's rattling. In particular, on his reappearance in listed company, he bolted up, but the ground was pretty fast that day, and I would fear for him, particularly over a mile, as most of his best form has come over sprinting distances or over 7 furlongs. A mile in good to soft ground, I think he might struggle. OK, let's see what they all have to be. Let's have a look at Palace Pier here at Sandown Park. This was a perfect comeback, wasn't it? Happy Power, bless him further back. They're sort of racing to pick up the pieces. This horse in a different stratosphere. Oh, certainly, and it was the perfect prep, really, because I think Connections probably wanted to test the water with him just to see if he was kind of back to his very best. And Frankie did it very nicely, really. He pushed the buttons when he needed to, and it was quite workmanlike in the end. I mean, he drew clear by 5 or 6 lengths in the end, but to be honest, he's a horse who does need some stoking up. He's quite unlike his sire, Kingman, who had that brilliant turn of foot. He, on the other hand, has to keep rolling, get going, and Frankie knows exactly how to ride him, and he did draw a clear in really good style. Look, the rivals he's beaten here aren't the ones he's got to beat on Saturday. 2 of them are running in the race, but they won't be getting to anywhere near him. And he's done what he needed to do, but 80% fitness, I think that's a really nice performance. He's hit the line running, and I'd be very encouraged if I had anything to do with the horse.
Okay, mention a couple more dangers. My Oberon certainly is a big danger. 27% strike rate for William Haggis the last fortnight. I think he'll be fine with the ground, and again, he's still low mileage.
He is. He's a very interesting horse. I was very taken by his performance at York when he won last season in a novice. And he kind of disappointed me a little bit after that. He couldn't quite find his best form, but on his reappearance in the Earl of Sefton, as we can see here, it was a pretty taking performance. Global Giant, though, did disappoint. He was odds-on favourites, and for whatever reason, he didn't give his true running. But My Oberon did all that he needed to do. Marie's Diamond, he beat quite comprehensively here. He's a horse going places quickly and looks to have made into a better 4-year-old already. As you say, William Haggis in cracking form has already had a couple of winners at York this week. And I'd say My Oberon is definitely one of those improvers that could get to that ceiling that Palace Pier has. He will need to improve quite significantly, even on this performance. This was a Group 2 against Group 2 horses, possibly even Group 3 horses. But the way he's quickening the final strides, it's nice to look at, and the fact that he's surely going to come on for this, as it was his reappearance, I thought a very encouraging performance. But yes, he's going to have to drastically progress, I think, to get to Palace Pier.
Yeah, but I think try and kick him out of the 3 will be hard.
Yeah, I would agree with that. I think if you're looking for one to take on the favourite, or at least to come each way money, he is definitely one of the ones who could improve to that ceiling. Yeah.
The last couple of years, I've seen a lot of these horses in the flesh. Top Rank is as good looking a horse as I've seen. He's a big frame of a horse. Now, we started when I first saw him, I think he was winning handicaps up at Thirsk, and again, like Palace Pier, come through the handicap ranks. But again, he's a hell of a horse. I think he'll handle the ground. He's out of an authorised mare. I think he'll handle it better than some.
Yeah, he's a feather in James Tate's cap, really, because he just keeps improving from start to start. He's a very consistent horse who's always struggled really at the very top, but he is progressing quickly, and this was a very nice performance when he beat My Oberon at Haydock last season. I think he's probably come on since then, because his win at Doncaster on his return was his most visually impressive yet, and I think he's the kind of horse that is going to keep improving as he gets older, and he's certainly not without a chance here. I do think his form is below the required level, but at the same time, if you put him against My Oberon, then he's got the beating of him, and he'd certainly not be without a chance, I'd have to say, each way for sure.
Okay, Lupi Fernandez, we should touch a little bit more on the Ballydoyle representative. They will be hoping that the worst of the weather doesn't hit the track.
They will be, and I think if the rain does come, they will be worried, because he is a horse who possesses a huge amount of speed, and we've seen that in the past at sprinting distances. He showed it again on his reappearance over a mile. Now, this was in listed company, it was against lesser opposition. We're yet to really see whether he stays a proper true mile, because he stayed a mile in America in the Breeders' Cup, but that was a very sharp mile around a bend. You don't really need to stay a proper mile in England if you're going to run in that race. And here, he didn't really need to stay. He was just a lot better. He showed a huge amount of speed in the closing stages, and he's just a different class to these kind of rivals. We're going to see how he can really get on against proper milers on Saturday, and I do think his stamina, if the rain comes, will be tested, and that is a worry for him, because, as I say, his worst performances have come in ground that is softer than good.
And I think that's Frankie will, in the back of his mind. I think Palace Pier's fairly uncomplicated. He will try and get the race to develop a fair way down and make sure it is a stamina test.
You're absolutely right. He certainly will do. He's a tactical master, we know that, and he will be trying to exert all the flaws in his rivals as possible. And I think the best way to do that is by using Palace Pier's stamina, because we all know he's got loads of it, and although he hasn't been tried over a mile and a quarter, he probably would stay that. And I think this kind of race, a stiff mile at Newbury, because it is stiff, is probably going to be absolutely right up his street.
A couple more we should mention. Century Dream is a course and distance winner, not a bad thing to have in your locker. We haven't seen him in over 200 days.
No, it'd be interesting to see how he gets on here. We know that he'll really like the ground if it comes up soft. He's one of the few in the race who is probably a soft ground specialist, and he bolted up at Goodwood in the Celebration Mile when the ground was on that soft side. However, he has struggled in his 8 starts at Group 1 level. He's never come really nearing to win one at all. So you'd have to say that in this grade he's slightly vulnerable. However, that said, if the ground does come up a little bit softer, he is going to have an advantage over many horses in this race, and I think you could give him a definite squeak, particularly as he has won at Newbury in the past. He's a horse with a huge amount of ability who's never quite put it all together at the top level, but if it did come up and there was a bit of rain, then you could easily see him putting it up to Palace Pier in the closing stages for sure.
Okay, Another horse we should mention, and we can see him in action, very different, is Lord Glitters. What a wonderful horse he's been for the late Jeff Turnbull. Be fantastic for his family if this horse will run well, and he will run well. He won at Queen Anne 3 seasons ago. He won in Maidan, obviously, the last time we saw him. He's been an excellent horse for David Amara, a real flagship horse.
What a superstar he is. He's such a fantastic servant. And it would be a very poignant victory, and I think a very deserved one as well. We can see him here winning the Jebel Hatter in fantastic fashion. A race that didn't really go right for him all the way through, but he still managed to come down the outside and win very easily. He doesn't always produce his best. He's quite erratic. But at his very best, he's certainly capable of winning a race like this one. He is one of the few, one of the 2 Group 1 winners in this field alongside Palace Pier. And he's a horse who hasn't won in Britain since June 2019. That would be a slight concern. He seems to save his best for Maidan these days. However, that said, if producing his best, we know he's got the class to win this kind of contest, and for sure he's got a chance.
Okay, we've been through the main protagonist for the Al Shaqab Lockinge. 12 runners go to post. Palace Pier takes a big chunk out of the market, and rightly so. Sum the race up. What's the winner? What's the dangers?
It's a really interesting race because you're looking basically at horses who have to improve to get to the favourite Palace Pier. Now, a few of them are quite unexposed. The likes of My Oberon and Top Rank this season have looked pretty good so far. They've both had one run, both won once. We don't know how good they're going to be, particularly My Oberon as a 4-year-old. He's beautifully bred, and he's the kind of horse for William Haggis who's particularly good with this kind of horse. You could just keep improving him as he goes up the ranks. But you're looking at Palace Pier, who's about £8 clear of everything else on ratings, and if he runs to his level, he sets a standard that everyone else has got to aim at. And it's a very exciting race in that respect because you're looking at horses who have to improve, whereas he doesn't really, and he's got the potential to improve himself. So really, if it is soft ground, which we expect it to be a little bit soft in the description at least, Palace Pier is very much the one they have to beat, and I can't really see him being beaten because everything is in his favour. The only horse I think who could possibly beat him is Lope Fernandez, but I think the ground would need to be fast as he's got so much raw speed.
Okay, we sort of agree. It's Palace Pier in flying dismounts just after 3:35 at Newbury in the Lockinge. I think My Oberon is a good each way bet. I think try and kick him out of the 3-8-year peril.
I would 100% agree with that. Yeah, he's very unexposed, very lightly raced. He's got the profile that would suit this kind of race. We'll know he'll like the ground if it does come up soft. And William Haggis is just so good with this kind of horse. And I do think, considering his pedigree, he is yet to probably reach his ceiling. And the fact that he won the Earl of Sefton so well probably wasn't quite fully tuned up for that. Suggests to me that he is going to improve on that. And I think a mile at Newbury is definitely going to help him. Yeah. And we saw at Haydock, he got run out of it in the closing stages by Top Rank. I wouldn't be at all surprised, though, if he not necessarily reverses that form. He might well do, but if he comes up alongside Top Rank in kind of levels of ability this year, because I think he will improve, and he certainly will hit the line stronger. He kind of faded a little bit at Haydock, but I think now, a year on his back, he's going to be more muscled up, more strong, and I can see James Doyle definitely being there, bang there towards the end, possibly not quite good enough to get to the likes of Palace Pier, but really good chance each way for sure.
It's a cracking race. Thanks to Tom for analysing for us, and all will be revealed very shortly. It's due off 3:35 in Newbury Saturday afternoon.
So we've heard about some of the key contenders for the big race. Martin, what do you think, though, are the characteristics that a horse needs in order to win the big race?
Well, it's a Group 1 race. It's the first big challenge of the year for 4-year-olds and upwards. So I think you need a horse that's got Group 1 form already, or a horse that's shown enough potential to improve into a Group 1 performer. This is not an easy race to win. We've seen the great horses have won it in the past, and you're going to need a horse of that level. But that being said, I think we've got a real good mix of runners for Saturday's Lockinge. I think we've got some improving horses that have shown they're capable of performing at this level, and we've got some old favourites returning. So it's all set up to be a really thrilling race. The conditions are fantastic. The course has dried out well, so it should be soft side of good. So it's all set for a big race.
It is indeed. The stage is set for the first big race of the season for the older horses, the Al Shaqab Lockinge Stakes. Good luck to all the contenders.